Welcome to the channel. Welcome to another video. Today we're talking fast, talking furious, talking Too Fast, Too Furious, also known as Fast 2, also known as the one with Luda and Tyrese in it, also known as the one with the worst, the most out of place line in film history. Yes, that one. We're talking fast, talking furious. Roll intro. This movie follows pretty closely after the events of The Fast and the Furious. See my review of that one, link in the description. But first, this one is preceded by a short film called The Turbocharged Prelude. This short shows Brian's life as a fugitive, with Brian racing his way across the United States down to Miami. He starts in a red Mitsubishi 3000 GT, ends up losing that as the cops find it, gets picked up by a woman, given a ride, dropped off at a used car lot, where he finds,
y'all ain't gonna believe this,
an R34 GTR. Wow, what a find on a used car lot in the United States. Maybe it's Leon's old car from Fast 1. Brian buys it, mods it out, makes it pretty, continues winning races. Not much important in the prelude other than to show that Brian is a great racer and an outlaw, and that he finds an R34 GTR on a used car lot in the United States.
Are you serious right now?
Movie itself begins with a street race arranged by Tej, played by Chris Ludacris Bridges. And you know what that street race means? We get our 2-foot dolly shot early, no delay, so check that box. Brian is invited as a last-minute fourth racer and, of course, wins the race. There is then a scramble as the cops show up. Brian is captured after the cops use some grappling hook-esque technology, grappling hooks. Check that box. The rest of the story is an undercover cop story with two people undercover, Brian and Monica Fuentes, played by Eva Mendes. 3 if you count Roman Pierce, played by Tyrese. An early highlight in the movie is the retrieval of Roman. He's a childhood friend of Brian and is in a demolition derby match while on house arrest and living in a camper van. He was locked up for receiving stolen goods. Not long after Brian became a cop, Roman blames Brian. The demolition derby scene is great, and along with the showdown and fight with Brian, serves to characterize Roman well and establish a great rapport between Paul Walker and Tyrese. Aside from that rapport, the focus on the cars and street racing is the strongest part of this movie as a part of the series. It truly serves as a spiritual successor to Fast 1. There are several races of different formats and plenty of cars to look at. This movie, if nothing else, has some cars going for it. Brian's GTR? Oh yeah. And this shot of Tej's garage? Some great cars to be seen here. I mean, look at this shot right here. A Type R Integra, the holy grail of front-wheel drives. What else do you see? Another thing that is a spiritual successor of Fast 1 is the 2 scramble scenes. One after the first street race that is very reminiscent of the scramble scene from Fast 1. It's a mini scramble, but a scramble nonetheless. And another when Brian and Roman switch cars and lose the cops. This later and larger scramble scene is a great use of the street race scene and a creative way to get that involved in the movie. I believe the producers even invited street racers and people with modded cars out to be a part of the movie, as was done in Fast 1. The group races are another way this movie continues with themes from Fast 1. There are 3 group races in this movie. The first is the opening street race, which is reminiscent of the 4-way drag race from Fast 1. The next is the one to become part of the team, where the objective is to retrieve the cigar from the Ferrari. The last is the tag team race to win untraceable cars. But these things are barely worth noting really. They're not really good points in the movie, right? Right. These things are fan service, hollow throwbacks to the original movie to give it a connection to the surprise popular movie that gives them the name recognition they need to leverage the original success. So, what are my issues with this movie? Well, my main issue with this movie is its inconsistency. To demonstrate this, look at the 2 group races. The first is just a pure race action scene. It does nothing for the plot, nothing for the characters. It actually sets a little emotional or character something up, but then destroys it completely. Let me explain. It involves the racer driving the Supra. He is talking with his other half about whether he'll win, and it's stated that he better win because they have rent to pay.
You think you're gonna win, baby?
What you think?
You better, we got rent to pay.
So I'm thinking, wow, here's some characterization. These people are desperate and might be willing to do anything to win. Might lose their home if they don't win. What might that mean for our hero Brian? But as soon as Brian shows up, Tej tells Brian the other racers have deep pockets, leading Brian to demand an increase to the wager, which the Supra driver agrees to. Thought you had rent to pay. Guess not. This destroys even the tiny amount of emotional stakes that had been set up for this race, and everything else about this race is similar. There's no reason to care. It's just a race. It isn't driven by any character traits, it doesn't demonstrate to us anything about the drivers or provide any important context for what will happen later. Or does it? Anyway, compare this to the race for the untraceable cars later in the movie. This race we care about, firstly because it drives the plot as our characters need the untraceable cars, and secondly because it is driven by the characters' traits, as we see Brian's and Roman's personalities affect the way they race, and shows us a few things about the two of them. It shows that Roman is a strong and competent driver, that Brian and Roman know how to size up a race and win it, even against long odds, and that Brian is fearless and truly motivated by this job and that we can trust him. And if we can trust him, then Roman can trust him. And this is important. Up to this point, Roman has had a hard time trusting Brian. He actually says as much when they're first going into the police department. And then when Roman finds out what Brian did in LA, you can tell from his face he truly does not trust Brian. But after this race, they're tight for the rest of the movie. This is why this scene works. We care about the characters and what is at stake in the scene, and the characters themselves care about what's going on in the scene, and the results of the scene have consequences for the rest of the movie. These two scenes demonstrate the issue with the movie, the up and down of the scenes, particularly the action scenes. Sometimes they drive the plot and show us something about the characters, sometimes they don't. But it's not just the action scenes. Take this scene. In this scene, Brian and Roman meet up with Verone and Fuentes in Verone's club. The point of this is to show just how ruthless Verone is. But why? We already know this about Verone. He makes them risk their lives racing to retrieve a cigar. He punks Roman over the stolen cigar cutter. He's threatening Fuentes on screen left and right. We already know he's bad news. This scene adds nothing but more of the same. Plus, there is no tension in this scene. Our heroes aren't in danger. Only this cop that we just met have no idea about what greater role he'll play in the movie and thus don't care about. This scene doesn't drive the plot. We don't need this scene for the later chase finale. It serves no purpose, so again, it's just not consistent. This is the movie's weakness. But again, inconsistent. Scene to scene, look at this scene. It's a good one. We actually get some pretty good tension in this scene right here, right at the end of Act 2, with Fuentes almost getting caught warning Brian about Verone's plan to kill them after the job. We find out that Fuentes is for sure on our hero's side. We get tension as the bad guys move in, and we see Roman doing what he does best, which we will continue to see in future movies in this series. It's a good scene, but it follows the useless club scene, so it has nothing to build on. So switching back to good things, one final point. I noticed a clever way they connected the later movies with this one, and that is the reuse of a character first introduced and used as an adversary, but reused later as an ally. This is done for the first time in this movie and involves two of the guys Brian raced in the opening scene, the guy driving the RX-7 and the guy driving the Supra. Remember him? I guess that first race was good for something after all, as it introduced them to us so they could come back here. Anyway, these guys are now helping by participating in the scramble scene. This has been done again and again since this movie, in Fast 5, where Dom and Brian race the Brazilian guy for the pink slip to the blue Porsche. But then that guy and his crew helps them back down Hobbs and his team later in the movie. And in Fast 8, where the guy Dom races in Cuba later helps Dom defeat Cypher. These scenes in the later Fast movies offer a connection to Fast 2 that some might miss, but they also offer something bigger, something that they all have in common, and that is that they all involve street racers. In each of these instances, the character that comes back was a street racer. This is the clever way that the movies, especially the later ones, can connect street racing to the greater film. And this is important because after Tokyo Drift, the producers knew they wouldn't sell enough movie tickets if there was too much street racing in the movies. But they also believe the racing roots are there, so they want to include something, and this is how they do it. To me, this is the number one thing Fast 2 offers to the future movies. So that's what I thought about Fast 2. Didn't care for it much, but it set the stage in a way. It was a typical sequel to a surprise hit just to print a few dollars. It would have ended here, but we have a couple magicians involved in the next few movies by the names of Justin Lin and Chris Morgan. End of video. If you want more Fast and Furious content like this, please like this video and spray that subscribe button and notification bell with NOS. Stay fast, stay furious.